Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the show. It's your host, Danny Hi-Fi. I am joined by two friends of the show, Larry Johnson, former CIA analyst, now geopolitical commentator and analyst. And we have Scott Ritter, former UN weapons inspector and U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, author, and geopolitical analyst. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, good to be here. I'm sorry I didn't get the word about the uniform. Otherwise,
Yeah,
I would have come appropriately dressed.
we got our blues on. And you have your signature Hawaiian shirt. So
Yeah.
everything is well. But what isn't going well, Jen? Let's get right to it. Hit the like button, everyone, as you come on. What isn't going well is this ceasefire debacle. Iran's deputy foreign minister said that they delayed a missile strike and drone strike retaliation against Israel as Israel has been bombing Lebanon, killing over 200 in the last 24 hours, thousands more injured. Iran said that Pakistan assured it that it would, the Pakistani mediators would talk to Trump and get Trump to essentially rein in Israel. Now there are reports that Israel is this the report here? Yep, that Trump called Netanyahu, urging him to scale back Israel's strikes in Lebanon to protect the negotiations, per NBC. While the Trump administration and Israel both said Lebanon is not covered by the ceasefire, Israel agreed to be a helpful partner. Yet other reports are saying, Scott and Larry, that Israel is going to conduct negotiations with Lebanon's government under fire. Now, Scott, I want to start with you. Iran has kept very strict control over the Strait of Hormuz. Some reports have said that they've kept it closed or have closed it further because of these strikes, because Lebanon is a key part of the ceasefire. There's reports that only one vessel now in the last 24 hours has went through, and that this ceasefire is very much on the brink. So how about we start with you, Scott? What's going on here? And how should we see the current situation regarding the ceasefire and the war?
First of all, there is no ceasefire. So let's stop talking about a ceasefire. It doesn't exist. There are precursors to a possible ceasefire, but this was always going to be a mess. We knew that on day one when Israel bombed Beirut and when the United Arab Emirates bombed Iranian oil infrastructure. This is a conflict that has many moving parts. We also have 31 autonomous military districts in Iran, that some of which may not be communicating effectively with the Iranian government. And so, because they are autonomous, if they haven't been given the word to cease and desist, they may continue operating. So this was always going to be a mess. It's also a political mess. There's a lot of, politically sensitive tightropes that have to be walked here by the United States, by President Trump, and by Iran. What you have is an agreement in principle that Iran's 10, salient points are on the table, and the United States' 15 salient points are on the table. And the parties are supposed to meet and begin a 2-week process of reconciling these points. So the notion that everything's agreed to up front is absurd. Nothing's been agreed to up front except that there's a need to talk. It's tragic what's happening in Beirut, absolutely tragic, but it's Israel. What do you expect? There's a game being played here, and there's a script being followed. The fact is, the United States did agree that Lebanon would be part of the ceasefire. That was stated up front, because when they accepted the Iranian points as a precursor to further discussion, the Iranian points said that Lebanon will be included. The American points didn't say that, but that doesn't automatically preclude the Iranian point. And the Pakistani president made it clear that the United States understood that Lebanon would be included. The problem is the United States was negotiating without coordinating with Israel. So now they have to go back and coordinate with Israel. Bibi was very unhappy. He said he could tolerate a discussion with Iran, but Lebanon's a special issue. Hezbollah's a special problem, and that they need to, continue doing what they're doing. What they can't do is allow Lebanon to automatically be rolled into Iran. So what Israel is doing is playing a game where they can now, be seen as linking any ceasefire with a negotiation with the Lebanese government, separate from the U.S.-Iranian talks. This is all just part of a game that's being played. What I say, and I'll leave it with this, is that both Iran and the United States have reached the maximum level of their escalation ladders, their respective escalation ladders. To go further for each one of them is to invite permanent harm to Donald Trump politically, meaning that things will be done that can't be reversed in time to have a positive impact on the November election. Donald Trump only cares about Donald Trump. He's the ultimate narcissist. We have to stop talking about American national security, foreign policy objectives, et cetera. This is all about Donald Trump's legacy. And Trump is panicked right now because it's not looking too good for him. And so, we have to let Donald Trump be Donald Trump. Iran is concerned about going so far that it doesn't matter if sanctions are lifted. If enough harm is done to Iran, the promise of the Iranian government to take care of the Iranian people will not be fulfilled. Right now, Iran is on the cusp of being able to fulfill a 47-year promise to the Iranian people that there will be economic good times. And that's the Iranian objective right here. There's other things wrapped in. The nuclear issue is one about pride, not about necessity. So Iran will negotiate on that. The Strait of Hormuz is about survival. So Iran won't negotiate that away, but they will negotiate some sort of, joint, stewardship. There's a lot of maneuver room here, but what's clear, at least from my perspective, is that neither party can afford to continue this conflict. There must be a resolution. So there's going to be a lot of games being played. And unfortunately, these games involve people dying, such as nearly 300 Lebanese. But there isn't a ceasefire, but I'm very optimistic that there will be a ceasefire.
Yeah, Larry, what's your thoughts here?
I see this is like a negotiation between two people about where and what to eat. The one party, let's call it the United States, they want to eat a worm-encrusted piece of cow manure. The other party, Iran, is wanting to eat steak. So how do you think that negotiation is going to go? Where's the middle ground? There is no middle ground. That's the point, number one. So the 10 points that Iran laid out were not negotiable points. They are their expectations and demands of what must be made and met in order for there to be negotiations. So they're not going to negotiate over how much of the Strait of Hormuz they close. In fact, I think the Ayatollah Mustafa Khamenei just said, "Hey, it's under new management. Get rid of it. It'll be the Strait of Iran, not Hormuz." So that's number one. Number two, the sanctions have got to be lifted. They're not going to go. They're going to sign up to an agreement, and we promise that we'll lift the sanctions just like we did under JCPOA. Iran's already, they've already been down that path. But they signed up to that agreement. They thought they even had the assurances of Russia and China back in 2015. And it's signed, then all of a sudden, Europe's like, well, we're not sure yet. You got to jump through this hoop. You got to do this extra thing. And then Trump tears up the agreement. And despite having signed it, despite having complied with allowing inspectors, despite doing what had been asked of the agreement, they didn't get a goddamn thing. So I think they understand now, no, we're not going to promise you, double pinky swear that we'll do it. No, that's got to happen before they make movement on anything else. Number one. So it'll be interesting to see if Iran allows Witkoff and Jared Kushner in the room on tomorrow, and that's assuming that the talks go forward. Now we got to look at how this evolved. When the initial agreement was announced, I'm not sure if Trump hadn't read it properly, but as Scott said, the United States had agreed, okay, Lebanon's on the table, Lebanon and Yemen and Iraq. Those three. It wasn't just Lebanon. The initial reaction in Israel and among the Zionist crowd, including the Christian Zionists like Mr. Huckabee, the Christian nut out of Arkansas, and then the Ben Shapiro's and the Mark Levins, you knew it was bad when Levin, who normally can't talk without screaming, okay, is like you need to get a sedative and hit him up with a couple of darts to drop him down to a level of normality. He was almost depressed, and he was talking in a low voice. So that told me right away, here comes the storm. And so so this was agreed to Tuesday night. So between Tuesday night and Wednesday morning, I think Trump got the number of verbal beatings and lashings. And all of a sudden, he was like Butterfly McQueen from Gone with the Wind. I don't know nothing about birthing no babies, Miss Scarlett. I don't know nothing about Lebanon. No, we didn't agree to that. No, they got to they got to open that straight now. And so he was reversing everything that they had agreed to. It was the intervention, and that's why Israel said, "Great, this is our chance. We're going to try to take Beirut back to the Stone Age," which they did on Wednesday. And Iran was reacting. Okay, they're not honoring this agreement, but it was the intervention of Pakistan and I believe also China. And while that one document or tweet that you showed seemed to be a polite conversation, no, it was. I think somebody on the Trump team called and threatened Israel. You cut this out now. So since the end of Wednesday, we haven't had any more of those bombings. Now there's still fighting going on the ground between Hezbollah and Israel, and I think where that is headed, Israel's ultimately they're going to have to withdraw their forces in a couple of weeks probably. So the talks that will take place, starting on Saturday. The parties will arrive on Friday, but the actual talks will be on Saturday. We'll know how serious they are. Will they be in person? And by that, I mean, will they be sitting in the same room talking to each other? Or are they going to continue this other nonsense of, the Pakistanis walk in and talk to the Iranians, and then they walk down the hall to another room and talk to the Americans. And then, that's retarded. They call that retarded diplomacy. And that will achieve nothing.
Yeah, you go a long way to do something as indirect as that. Scott, I want to get you in here and maybe to comment on the various positions that both sides have taken amid these bad faith actions taken by Israel and the United States since talks have been announced. Here was what Donald Trump said today, that the shooting is going to start bigger, better, and stronger than anyone else has ever seen before, until if a real agreement is not reached and complied with. And there was a lot more to it, but let's not read the whole thing here. And then Iran is saying, of course, that these talks are in danger of falling apart if the Lebanon question is not resolved. So, but what do you make of Trump's stance here? The Trump administration stance, it seems to always be a lot of bluster, talking about coming back in and destroying everything if Iran doesn't do what the U.S. says. Iran doesn't seem like it's budging. And, Larry mentioned China. Some of what I heard about why China got involved is because, well, what happens if the United States did what it threatened to do just a couple of days ago, and then Iran did what it said it was going to do in retaliation, take out all of the Gulf energy? Well, a lot of the world's energy would be destroyed, and that would hurt China. That would hurt the entire world economy. But your reactions to these developments?
Well, first of all, I hearken to Game of Thrones, season 1.
I love that show, by the way. I know what reference you're about to make. I just heard you say it.
Played, sir. Okay, which part of season 1? Okay.
Well, when Joffrey is the new king and he's being dressed down by Tyrion in the council, and Joffrey says, "You can't speak to me that way. I am the king." And he speaks to him, "I am the king." And then his grandfather says, "Any man that has to say he is the king is not the king." And that's how I view Donald Trump's posts. If you got to sit there and say, the shooting's going to start, we're going to kick your butt 40 days after the shooting started, and you haven't kicked their butt, it's empty bluster. Look, the United States expended the totality of their so-called good targets. There are no good targets left. all that's left now is a war crime, a blatant war crime. We know that what's going on right now is a war crime, an illegal war of aggression. We know that war crimes have been committed, the massacre of the 165, 170 schoolgirls in Minab, and other atrocities, of equal, horror. So I'm not trying to pretend that the United States hasn't been committing war crimes. They have, but one could articulate, military intent on some of these or accident. But now the expanded target deck that Trump was talking about is 100% collective punishment, 100% cultural genocide. His own words convict him, and his own words are what basically got him in trouble, because I believe the establishment pushed back. I believe that generals put him on notice that we won't execute these orders. These are unlawful orders. We're not going to do that. And Donald Trump may have never intended to execute those orders. These were all the bluster before he accepted something that had been put on the table prior to the bluster. That's why I believe this. Those 10 points had been articulated by Iran well before Donald Trump threatened to erase Iranian civilization.
Yeah.
So it's not as though the Iranians went, oh, God, no, he's threatening to erase us. Here's 10 points. The Iranians already had the 10 points out there. Zarif had already published his paper in Foreign Affairs. I mean, so the Iranians had their position. This is Donald Trump impressing himself, talking to himself. But there won't be any more shooting because there's nothing to shoot. The war's over. We lost. He just can't admit it. There's nothing more we can do. We're out of significant quantities of standoff precision-guided munitions, so we can't do long-range strike anymore, not in a meaningful fashion. Part of the strike package that was moving in were B-52s armed with Mark 84 gravity bombs with the satellite-guided components, or the JDAM components. They pulled back when it suddenly became clear that, the Iranians have long-range standoff radar-guided missiles still in service. That's what shot down the F-15E. And we can't come in and suppress those effectively anymore because they also have this whole new thing that we hadn't planned on, electro-optical guided, infrared guided combination thereof. We didn't defeat the Iranian air defense. The Iranians played us. We didn't destroy their Navy. Who the hell do you think laid those mines in the water?
Right.
The Iranian Navy. Hey, Pete, how's that looking for you, pal? And I can guarantee you this. Iranian aircraft will be flying in the Iranian skies because they haven't been destroyed either. They've been stored. The Iranians rode out our attack, rode out the best we have, and now they've come in with phase 2, and we don't know how to deal with it. We had 2 options to save face. First option was to go into Isfahan, and do the seizure. I'm writing something up right now. I don't want to, drag on forever, but, there's more to this mission than meets the eyes, this rescue mission. It's not what it's much more than that. It was the effort to go after the uranium, and it failed. Absolutely failed. Desert One type calamity. And 2, we can't carry out an amphibious operation. The USS Tripoli couldn't get near the shore. It's impossible. And the military said, we're done. Trump has no options. He can't secure the Strait of Hormuz. And that's the critical thing. Iran has their fingers on the throat of the global economy right now. They can squeeze anytime they want. And there's nothing Donald Trump can do to change that. No amount of bluster will change that. And that's what's really hurting him. He can't declare victory. So he had no choice but to bluster, and make it appear that he brought the Iranians to the table. You saw Pete Hegseth. We have dominance. We dominate everywhere. Again, if you have to say you have dominance, you don't have dominance. It becomes quite obvious. So I take everything this president says is great. There's nothing more the United States can do. We don't have the military capacity. And, we bring in China. Understand this. We just proved to the Chinese that we can't defeat them in Taiwan. I just want everybody to understand that. We just proved there's no longer a question that we can't do anything to China. The National Security Strategy document published in November of last year said the United States will dominate the Chinese by seeking conventional military overmatch in the Pacific. Overmatch. That means we're superior. We're superior to nothing. We can't beat the Iranians. Imagine what we do against the Chinese in Taiwan. Nothing. We can't secure the South China Sea. So the Chinese just proved that they have their fingers on the throat of the international shipping lanes that go through that. They control everything. This is a game changer. The United States needs to pull back and regroup. And that's what we're doing. Look at what we're doing in Europe. I mean, I think we're withdrawing 100,000 troops. That's what Marco Rubio says we're probably going to do. I think NATO's dead because we're disengaging from Europe because we can't compete in Europe anymore. It's too expensive. It takes 6 months to deploy a heavy armored brigade. It used to take us 10 days to deploy 300,000 troops rolling in on pre-positioned equipment. That doesn't exist anymore. The United States is literally a paper tiger. We look good, but all of our capabilities are legacy capabilities that don't match modern realities. I'll just leave you this. Commandant of the Marine Corps Berger in 2019 said, we can't carry out our mission because we're trapped by legacy amphibious operations. We can no longer put all our Marines on a handful of amphibious ships and go in and project power ashore because they'll sink us before we get there. That was just proven. The USS Tripoli is retreating from the region, not advancing on the region. And there we are. This is why the United States will accept a ceasefire. It'll be interesting to see how we play it because there's a lot of politics involved, but we have no other options. There will be no shooting because there's nothing to shoot with and there's nothing to shoot at.
Larry, please come in. Same.
Well, as long as we're fighting Grenada, man, we are badass. Back in 1983, when we did invade Grenada, there was a SEAL team led by the commander. I think he was commander, maybe he was Lieutenant Commander Rick Woolard. And Rick was a Vietnam veteran. And he and his SEALs went to secure the governor of Grenada. And they got him. And then, they're carrying basically, short-barreled rifles. And they've got handguns. Well, they were pinned down with some 50 caliber machine guns, heavy machine guns that were manned by some Cubans. So what did they do? They had to wait until the Marines landed and deployed their tanks, and the tanks came roaring up the road. Now, why am I telling a story that's like 43 years old? Well, the Marines got rid of their tanks now. So if the same situation was unfolding today, Rick and his buddies would be screwed, okay? Because the Marines couldn't come rescue them because they don't have the tanks anymore. And it's exactly what Scott was talking about, that, we have a 20th century military model. It's based upon, we've got these aircraft carriers that they can sell out, and they have this air power on board, and boy, they can project force, except if they get within 500 miles of shore, they're vulnerable now to these hypersonic missiles. And in the case of China, they got to stay like 1,000 miles off. And that creates a problem for the projecting air power because the combat radius of like the F-35s is something like 500, 600 miles. So, just do the math. If you're 700 miles offshore and you launch your F-35s, they're going to have to get refueled somewhere. And those air refuelers, they're pretty easy targets to shoot down. They're not stealth. So, we've got that problem that the traditional way of projecting naval power no longer works. And that was highlighted in the Red Sea last 8 months ago, as we tried to establish freedom of navigation. At least they had a very specific objective, military objective, and the U.S. Navy failed. They got driven out of the Red Sea by the Houthis, except Donald Trump, in classic Trump fashion, proclaimed it, they capitulated. So let's go, guys. They've won. We've won. They've lost. Let's go. We retreat. And, I've always said I could see the Houthis. It'd be like a Monty Python skit. All the Houthi leadership would be sitting around the table going, capitulate? Did you capitulate? Me? I can't even spell capitulate. So that kind of thing. So we've gotten to the age where it's pretend victory. Similarly, ground forces. Oh boy, we got this army, man. We're going to invade. Well, okay, we got like 452,000 in the army now, and I think it's like 140,000 within the Marines. that pales in comparison. We had about that total number on the ground in Vietnam at the height in 1968, 69. So we can't field that kind of army. In 2003, when we were going to invade Iraq, we had 11 months to assemble troops in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. 165,000, I believe, was the number. We can't do that today. I mean, you do that today, they're going to be getting hit with missiles and with drones. You know, as Scott recalls back in those days, going out for scud hunts. Well, the scuds, you know, one, we never found them, but they were not very effective. Not today. The combination of missiles and drones make it completely ineffective. So that leaves us with air power, and air power has its limits. And you know, Iran, they watched carefully, you know, 23 years ago what we did to Iraq, and they said, okay, we can't keep this stuff above ground. No, we can't do that. We got to go underground. And so they've moved an enormous amount of their actual military assets underground. And we, no matter how many bombs and buster bunkers we drop, we're not touching it. So this then brings up the point of, how do you define victory? Well, okay, you got to have some objectives. Iran didn't choose this. So it's had one objective: survive and force the other side to come and seek negotiation. That's exactly what has happened. It was not Iran running to Pakistan pleading, "Oh, please call the Americans up, tell them we're sorry. We'll bend over and they can do whatever they want to us." No, it was the opposite way, that the United States was pleading. And Israel's too stupid and too damn proud to do the pleading, but they need it, because their own chief of staff warned the government 2 weeks ago, we're collapsing. We can't continue this. So, you know, the United States is going to paint this as if, it's a great victory. We forced the Iranians to surrender. And the Iranians might allow some of that to go on without challenging it, just, be a little benevolent. But they are going to insist this war against Lebanon stops now. And if it doesn't stop, back to the battle stations. And that leaves the world in a difficult strait. And that strait is called the Strait of Hormuz, because the Iranians basically have the world by the balls. It's worse than a chokehold.
Yeah, Scott. I mean, and Larry, when I saw Iran publicly say that the reason why there will need to be naval coordination for any vessels coming through the Strait of Hormuz, it's because there are mines laid out there, and if the Navy and the military aren't coordinating and escorting, you might go boom. So that's that was really interesting, especially in this moment. But
actually, let me interject. Have Scott put together a battle plan to retake the Strait of Hormuz, because I want him to explain just how damn difficult, if not impossible, this thing is.
Sure. Yes, Scott, please. That's a great question.
So if I'm going to take the Strait of Hormuz, first of all, you're going to have to come through Jordan, because you can't land 400,000 American troops in Saudi Arabia, that close to Mecca, Medina. So you're going to have to come through Jordan, which means now that you're going to need to go through Iraq, and that's going to be contested. So right off the bat, we're going to have a precursor fight securing lines of communication through Iraq. You're going to have to set up several logistics hubs on the way in. So it's going to be an advance contested, through resistance forces and attacked by drones and missiles as you're going in. But you're going to have to come through Jordan, set up bases until you get to a position where you can project fire control over Karg and about 20 kilometers inside of Iran. And then you're going to have to initiate an air campaign that's going to last as long as it takes to suppress meaningful resistance there. And then you're going to have to land troops and sweep the coastline. It's going to take, when we plan to do this, because we've been planning to do this for a while, we were going to come in through Chabahar, forcible entry in Chabahar. We're talking about 60 to 80,000 Marines, followed up by 120 to 200,000 Army soldiers. That was the op plan. That op plan got modified to be Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. But this is the number of troops that you're talking about. So right off the bat, and now we have to defend a long line of communication. You got to almost double the troops. We got to have air defense that we don't possess. We can't do it. That's the problem. We can't do it. We don't have the capacity to do it. If you really want to plan, then I would say we have to mobilize the United States of America. We have to put 2 million men and women, primarily men, in uniform. And we have to basically do a World War II style invasion and occupation of the march going in. We're going to have to occupy Iraq, and then we're going to have to move into Kuwait and occupy Kuwait, and then we're going to have to sweep into Iran and sweep our way down. And we're talking millions of troops to do this. And we still might not win because the lines of communication are too tenuous. The Iranian missiles will create havoc on our logistics. So there's just not a snowball's chance in hell that the U.S. military today is capable of securing the Strait of Hormuz. Zero, no capability, no capacity. But we knew that going in. That's the frustrating aspect of this. And when Donald Trump says, well, we never anticipated, all we did is anticipate. And we saw this. When I was a weapons inspector in Iraq, I worked often with the Fifth Fleet, and sitting there just having casual conversations. At that time, we felt confident that we could secure the Strait of Hormuz using conventional naval power. But as Iran developed its ballistic missiles, Iran got better and better and better. The reality became that we can't penetrate their area denial weaponry. And so Iran owns the Strait of Hormuz, and they will forever own the Strait of Hormuz, and there's nothing we can do to change that equation. It's not even worth trying to come up with a plan because it won't work. It just will lead to massive casualties on the part of the United States.
Yeah. Well, another question I had, and Larry, you can start. I know, Scott, you're writing about this, is, the timing isn't lost on me when as developments led to now these upcoming talks of a potential ceasefire, where we had the whole incident, the F-15 being down, and of course what happened afterward, the rescue operation / plus whatever else was happening, seizing uranium operation, what have you. And I just want to know, Larry, and then to you, Scott, your thoughts on what exactly happened there and how it influenced the U.S.'s position now as a ceasefire.
Let me state up, 20 years ago, I worked on what they called an attack on a hardened, deeply buried target, an HDBT, inside Iran, to going after a nuclear site. And, the lesson back then that we came out with was, don't do it, it's too costly, not in terms of dollars, but in terms of human life and material. I do believe that the deployment, an order was given sometime around March 11th, March 10th, because we saw an uptick then in deployment out of all of the bases in the United States that service U.S. Special Operations Forces. You saw it was coming out of Hunter Army Airfield in Georgia that had the 75th Rangers and an element of the Task Force 160. Coming out of Pope Army Airfield that had both, the 82nd, but also Delta Force and some other units that are, the Special Tactical Squad, STS 24th. They're sort of the preeminent. Those are the Special Operations Parachute pararescue jumpers / combat controllers, but they're the ones that go out and recover people. You had the Fort Campbell, Kentucky, again, the 160th there being loaded up and moved. You had the other Ranger Battalion out of Joint Base Lewis McChord. You had SEALs coming out of Oceana Naval Air Station. So, the only times that I ever saw those kinds of forces being assembled, it was either for some, big ass exercise, or they're doing it for real world. And in this case, it was clear it was real world. Now, so they were teed up. I don't know if they were going to go after Bashir, after Isfahan, or after Natanz, because Natanz is, I think, about 30, 40 miles north of Isfahan, maybe a little farther. What that F-15 was doing in the area, it was, let's call it preparation of the battlefield, or carrying out, trying to destroy some assets. What was unusual is that the chief weapons officer, the weapons system officer, WSO, that was sitting in the back seat, which is normally handled by a lieutenant or a captain, was a full bird colonel who was the vice wing commander of the U.S. forces at Mawafat Salti Air Base there in Jordan. Now, I've talked to some friends that have, worked at the KAOC, the Combined Air Operations Center in Al Udeid, and it was unusual. It was rare, but it wasn't unheard of that a senior guy like that would say, I want to get my time in the plane, and I want to get my feet wet in this endeavor. Clearly got shot down. What we do know now is that as soon as they got shot down, Pentagon and CENTCOM and CIA, man, they went on a massive disinformation campaign. They were, the reports are getting leaked that the plane actually went down 120 miles southwest down towards the coast, let's say 80 miles from Karg Island instead of just south of Isfahan. I saw a map reproduced that if the map was accurate, that the colonel actually, after he ejected the aircraft, was located at a juncture, near a road juncture, a north-south highway 65, and the colonel landed, say, 3-4 miles away. Probably broke his ankle. There were also reports of a broken leg, but he was able to hobble about a mile up this slope of a mountain and hide himself. Now, the CIA started to later put out this nonsense. Oh, we found him because of his heartbeat. We detected his heartbeat from outer space. Oh, horse shit. Okay. What they're putting that story out just so that they can try to hide what other capability they may have used to actually locate him. Because the only way you're going to identify someone by their heartbeat, we're going to record your heartbeat. We're going to digitalize it. We're going to put it into the file. And then when you crash, we can come look for you. Find Private Schmuckatella's heartbeat, please. To beep, 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 beep. So now here's the question, and it's odd, and so I'm just laying out I'm trying to lay out a scenario that makes sense to me for what we see. What we see on the ground, and instead of landing at an airstrip that was in a valley about 8 kilometers north, these C-130Js land on this desert land that's near actually one of a holy shrine of Ali. Each is carrying 2 little birds, 2 AH-6 little birds. We know just by basic math that if you've got a 2 C-130s loaded with two AH-6 helicopters apiece, then the maximum number of troops that you can carry on each of those, apart from the crew, the 3-man crew, is basically about 15 people. That's maximum. So that gives us a total of 30. And I'm thinking, so how do you break out that 15? Do you want to have the 2 pilots that you'd need for each little bird? No, if you're running a rescue mission, you just want 2 pilots for one little bird on each plane. So you got a total of 4 pilots among the 30. That gets us down to 26. Then how many PJs do you want? Okay, again, I'll put 2 PJs on one C-130 and 2 PJs on another. You got backup in case something happens to the first one. So then, we're now down from that 15, we're down to 11. So 11 are made up of either, Rangers, 75th Battalion, or SEALs. And that's just if this is a rescue scenario. That normally when they go out to land those kinds of planes in a desert environment, you do a site survey in advance. They didn't do a site survey. So maybe that explains why the planes came in, and on landing they just dug in, and there is seen some damage to the wings or to the propellers, like they hit the ground. So maybe that's the explanation. But we also, in some of the photographs that were provided, you could see that like the boom that's used to refuel, it was shot up. So had these things been shot up and shot down out of the sky, that's a possibility. The one that really is bizarre is they recover an ID card from the wreckage, along with her. It's a woman, a major apparently. Amanda Ryder is her name, and she's got her platinum American Express card. Don't leave home without it. So. I don't think that the actual mission to try to get I think the downing of this plane caused the mission to be canceled. I think the reason they had those little birds already packed up in the planes was because that was part of the intended operation, and they repurposed it. But I'm just offering an opinion. I'd be curious what Scott thinks.
Yeah, Scott, what's your assessment? I know you're writing about it.
Look, this is all crazy stuff, but so there's a lot of informed speculation. Let's start with this, though. The intent to launch a raid against Isfahan was public information.
Right.
Straight up public information that included not just unnamed sources, but named sources, including General Votel, former commander of Special Operations Command, but also, people who could be identified. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that Kash Patel just announced the arrest of some people who were speaking to the media in an unauthorized fashion, and he said, we can't allow this. We hunt this down. We shut it down. Boom, boom, boom. But you have people talking to the media about this major raid that's being planned. And we're talking about, they're going to land and 82nd Airborne is going to launch, parachute a brigade in. They're going to build a runway and then land aircraft with heavy excavation equipment. And they're going to spend weeks, perhaps months, digging out the South Tunnel of Isfahan. This is the plan that's put out there. It's so absurd, it's not even funny. Larry, you were involved in planning this. I can guarantee, I will bet my entire paycheck that your plan didn't involve people staying on the ground more than a couple hours.
Yeah, it's get in and out. Don't you're not going to stay.
Yeah, it's so the publicly released plan for which nobody was prosecuted. General Votel wasn't called in and said, why are you talking about these things? Those are TTPs, baby. You can't talk about that. It's disinformation. It's a 100% disinformation campaign run by the White House. Why? Because the plan's completely different. We're not going to land and go in through the front tunnel. Now we get to, we talk about other things. And Larry, if you disagree with me anytime, please step in, because I'm trying to be. I've worked with Joint Special Operations enough that I can say this confidently. Past patterns repeat themselves. Okay, they're not that innovative when it comes to many things, especially when it comes to national level planning. Before there's a briefing to the president, there will be models built, scale models and full-scale models, and rehearsals conducted, where they're going to do every aspect of this mission: secure the airfield, unload the helicopters, fly to a point with special equipment, and execute the mission. They will have rehearsed this. And we even know where they rehearsed it, because this will have been done at the Nevada test site. I had a mission that trained up there. We also trained nearby in Edwards Air Force Base. This is how this works. So this
just by the way, that's where the exercise in 2006 took place.
Yeah, it's just
So-
it's past patterns repeat themselves. I can probably even tell you the airfield that they landed at to simulate airfield seizure. It might be the same airfield that they landed at to simulate airfield seizure for Desert One. And it's the same one they used to simulate the rescue of UN weapons inspectors taken hostage by Iraq. But my point is this. President Trump made a decision sometime in March that they were going to launch this raid. They did a deception campaign to create get the Iranians looking here, land, boom. This was going to be an in and out operation. They were going to land. We can again take guidance from Firdos. What we now know about Firdos is that there was a ventilation shaft. When you have these deep underground facilities, there will be ventilation shafts. There has to be ventilation shafts. It's required for safety. You can't function down there without this. And what DARPA did is study that. I don't know what they call it anymore. The National Geospatial used to be Defense Mapping Agency.
NGIA.
Yeah, they come up with some fancy name, Geospatial Intelligence Agency or something. They do modeling. They do the whole thing. They've been looking at this for years. We also know that that IAEA inspectors were in this facility. They were in the tunnels. They reported back to the CIA. I promise you, I know this for a fact, that they were debriefed by the CIA, and they took all the dimensions. They know where the ventilation shafts are, and they built models. And they found a vulnerability, and they were going to land, assault, go down the vulnerability, seize or destroy, and get the hell out of there. It was going to be a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of operation, because that's what they do. You've heard about Master Sergeant Vining, the EOD legend from Delta Force. During Desert Storm, he had a mission to go into Taji, and I can talk about it because he's talked about it. If he hadn't talked about it, I couldn't talk about it. But he was going to go into Taji, a facility that I inspected later is one of their big sector operations command centers, giant, massive slab of concrete with a command center in there. We thought that's where Iraq was running their Scud war. We tried to hit it with bombs. They bounced off. They didn't work. So near the end of the war, he was going to go in with the Delta crew. Rangers were going to secure that site. He was going to go in, blast his way in, destroy the site, and come out. It was an in and out job. We're saying this isn't going to last days. It's going to last hours. He has to get it done now. And that's just the way it is. So this, I believed, and now we also know, again, listening to Hegseth and company, LeCain, that the man in charge of the rescue mission was the commander of JSOC, Lieutenant General. Bear, I think his last name is, former Delta guy. Lieutenant generals don't command rescue missions. They just don't. He was the commander of a joint special operations task force that operates separate from Central Command Authority, works directly for the President of the United States. These assets were brought in as part of this joint special operations task force, and they were given the mission of launching the Isfahan raid. Now, when you take a look at the timelines available here, I had been working under an assumption that maybe they were given an audible, meaning that getting this colonel out was so important that they had to drop everything else to get it. I don't believe that anymore, because you take a look at the loadout of the aircraft. I believe that this was an airfield seizure There would have been follow-on echelons coming in that were called off because it went bad from the start. But the whole rescue of this pilot thing, I don't believe we sent air helicopters out. I don't think Navy SEALs made contact with the guy. I think this guy was picked up either earlier or whatever. But because only one, the president said there were only 3 little birds. Now, he could have misspoke, but he also talked about, a package that was on there that contained specialized equipment, including anti-aircraft missiles. That means you're seizing an airfield. Again, we go back to Desert One. They don't change what they do. When the guys took over Desert One, took over that landing strip that Jim Carney had pre-surveyed, they came off with surface-to-air missiles. That was their thing. They were there to secure against possible air attack. This team had similar loadout with more modern air defense equipment. They also had specialized scaling equipment, mountain climbing equipment, the president called it. They weren't climbing mountains. They were going into the mountain, down a shaft. This was all on a pallet that could have been removed. 2 of the 3 AH-6 didn't get off the aircraft. They were in the aircraft and were destroyed in the aircraft when it got blown. Only 1 exited the aircraft, and according to the Iranians, it didn't fly. The Iranians are saying there were no aircraft rescue mission. They unloaded it. Some vehicles came off, airfield seizure guys. I'm thinking ATVs, some motorcycles to secure the airfield. But because one of the planes apparently got hit by anti-aircraft fire too. The Iranians claim that they hit it, and there's physical evidence that suggests that. This thing got screwed from the start. And when it got screwed, they needed to, see if they could save the plan. And so they changed it from a failed raid on Isfahan to a successful pilot recovery mission. But there's nothing about what happened on the ground that lends itself to believe that this team saved that pilot.
Yeah, I'll just say, though, the guys I've talked to, they were legitimately spun up on what was called a personal recovery mission. Everyone I scripted over. Last count was like 153 of JSOC exercises during that 23-year period, starting in 1994. And it became a joke that every one of those missions, regardless of where it was, we had to have an airfield seizure for the Rangers. That's what they do. So that's why you bring the 75th Rangers. But the thing that doesn't add up for me is that you only have 2 J-130s there. Now, maybe there was another one involved that got away. That could have been the Rangers, because I remember I role played the U.S. ambassador to Algeria in an exercise that was done at Jacksonville, Florida, and it was simulating. A Delta Force came in to launch an assault. And we did it on the fire tower in downtown, one of the downtown areas of Jacksonville, and it was pretty funny. The general that was commanding that was General Bargewell, who unfortunately he later died in a tractor accident after he retired. But when Delta hit the tower and started shooting, all the drug dealers on the street dropped their drugs, and we collected like a pharmacy later from all the drugs that were scattered about. But when they hit the airfield, as the plane lands, the C-130 comes out, the ramp drops down, and the guys come riding out on motorcycles. It's very Hollywood. But there is a lot about this that's just not. All I know for sure is the explanation that Donald Trump, John Ratcliffe, and Pete Hegseth gave the other day, and General Kane, was a lie. It was not true. They dressed it up. They were putting lipstick on the pig and putting a wig on her too, but it was not as they said. So there's just, and I still had clearances and was in the inside when the Operation Red Wing took place, what became the movie Lone Survivor. I was seeing real time what was happening then. I watched real time back then the taking out bin Laden and Pat Tillman, the whole thing surrounding Pat Tillman's death. All I saw was consistently they tend to lie. They don't. You don't get the truth. You get a bunch of lies. Either it's to cover up incompetence, or sometimes it's covering up some genuine operational, OPSEC information that you want to keep from the public. But more often than not, it's trying to create a narrative spin that has a political objective.
Yeah. Well, in the last 5 minutes or so, both your takes on just this question of then how much does this incident, as well as just the broader, because now there's more reports, for example, about Kuwait and the disaster that happened there that led to the drone strikes by Iran, which did cause the most casualties for U.S. troops during the kinetic part of this conflict. How much did all of this lead to the United States, Donald Trump, agreeing to working toward a ceasefire and an eventual end to this? Scott, you first.
I think the failure of the raid on Isfahan was the straw that broke the camel's back. There was talk about amphibious operation against Karg. It was never going to happen. It just couldn't happen, as I already pointed out. I think this was the straw that broke the camel's back. The Strait of Hormuz closure was the thing that was killing this whole operation. This was an embarrassment, and the president had no choice but to go into his crazy mode to make it appear that he forced the Iranians to agree to a deal that the Iranians had already said they're willing to have a discussion about. But that's why I think this thing deserves so much scrutiny, because this was the thing. This was the high risk gamble that Trump was going to take so he could have a victory. I don't think they were going to recover the nuclear material because that stuff's just too heavy and too much of it. I think they were going in to destroy it. And that's that. But all right, Danny, I got to run right now. Larry.
Yeah, I just saw that message. Yeah, Larry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. See you later, man.
See you. All
Okay,
right,
thanks.
Larry. Yeah, your final comments.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with Scott on that. Look, this we don't have a clear military objective that we can point to that we've accomplished in the course of now going on 7 weeks of war. And Iran's objective is simple: survive. They've survived. Not only have they survived, but they've now gained control of the world economy. They've recognized they got economic leverage that they didn't have before. And they have shut down a number of U.S. critical military bases throughout the Gulf. So, from that standpoint, Iran's actually now in a better position to support Hezbollah. And what we saw in this war was close coordination between the two. So there is a deal to be had, but it's going to be on Iran's terms, and it'll be difficult for Trump to paint it as a great victory for the United States, but they may find a way to try to do that. But if they don't come to agree on Iran's terms, then the war will restart, and I think the U.S. is going to focus its efforts to militarily take the Strait of Hormuz, which is mission impossible. Because let's say they got troops on Oman and they got troops on Kemish. Great. What the insurance companies insist, you can't have ships going into an area where they might get hit with missiles. And as long as they've got missiles and drones that have a reach to get to the Strait of Hormuz, it's not open. It's that simple. Yeah. All right, my friend. Yeah, I got to bail too. Yeah. Garland Nixon will be mad at me.
Yeah. So Garland, I said hi, and I'll close up here. Thanks so much, Larry.
All right, and you have a safe travel too.
Take care. Bye. Yes, thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, as Larry said, I am actually traveling to China very soon. I won't release the date, but it will be in this period of the ceasefire talks. But I won't release the exact day and time. But I'll be trying to do shows there. So everyone hit the like button because that helps keep the show going. With that news, though, I just want to end on this with the analysis that we just heard from Scott and Larry. Just think about this sentence, and then you tell me, everyone, if the world has changed. Iran has gained control over the global economy. That's what Larry Johnson just said. If If you just say that to yourself over and over again, and then I think the message of the world has changed and the reality that the world has changed dramatically just from the last 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks of this war. I think tells us all we need to know about where the balance of forces are right now in the geopolitical realm, but really in terms of the entirety of global political and economic organization. It really is a massive defeat for the United States, maybe the biggest since Vietnam, maybe bigger. We will have to see how things, of course, transpire, because that will dictate exactly what that looks like. But nevertheless, everyone, hit the like button. That helps keep the show going. I want to thank everyone who gave a super chat today. That was very much appreciated. I'll pull up some of you right now. Given what we say, why did they not respond to the U.S. when they bombed them at the end of the 12-day war? Hope to meet you, Scott. That's a good question. My opinion about this question is that what the United States did during those so-called bombings, the B-2 bombers going over the nuclear facilities, I have to say that it must have been coordinated and the damage was not significant. All right, and I think that's why it was an agreement. I think it was an agreement to give Donald Trump, the apparent big strong moment he needed to then tell Israel to stop doing what it's doing. The Cradle said the USA worked with Israel to strike Israel yesterday. I think you mean to strike either Iran or Lebanon, but nevertheless, the United States is always working with Israel. So we can't say it's not. It always is. Whatever Israel is doing, the United States is doing. Thank you, Danny, for your work and bringing the best analysts. Thank you so much for this generous super chat. Here we have you should go into politics on Danny Foundation of Black America appreciates you. Well, I appreciate that. I'll never go into politics, but I appreciate that. I'll go into politics when the system is different. How about that? When we have won a just and fair system for humanity. I love Larry Shirk with the program, Scott and all. Love you too. Thank you so much. Hussein, yeah, Uncle Haz. Hey, how's it going? Thanks for watching. I know you from DD Geopolitics. Great commentator. Everyone should follow DD Geopolitics on YouTube. It's very possible that just as Russia faced diplomatic pressure from its friends to negotiate with Ukraine, Iran is facing the same as to satisfy those demands in its core strategic position. Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some pressure on Iran, right? And I think this is my position on this, everybody, and then I will head out as well. My position on why Iran is willing to engage in this process, yes, has a lot to do with China, but I don't think it is China trying to squeeze Iran into essentially stopping the war. I think Iran, as well as China and Pakistan, they all looked at what was going to happen, and they all saw that it was going to be a really big disaster for it would have been a disaster for the multipolar world. Iran could get through this. China could get through it. But if the United States crossed the red line and began bombing the energy infrastructure, the bridges, all of this to a massive scale, or at least as massive scale as they could, even if they just did it once, it did it a little bit, then Iran would be forced to hit really hard the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Gulf countries, energy, turn their lights out, and maybe make it irreparable, the damage that they would have done, which for Pakistan, for China, who have really close relationship, by the way, that would have been really difficult for them economically in the long term, because it would have been long-term damage. And so that's why I believe that China stepped in to mediate, but I really think it was Pakistan who was like, look, with China at its back, that was like, look to the United States, look, if you do this, it's going to not go well for you. It's not going to go well for anybody. It's going to really harm us. Your interests are going to be devastated and destroyed. And of course, Pakistan can come to China and say, hey, our relationship is so good. Just understand that if we can't get Iran to if we can't get this to stop, then the consequences of the escalation would have been too dire. So I think that's what happened. I mean, of course, with more, I don't have the details. I don't have what was happening in the back rooms or anything like that, or in the back channels, the calls or anything. But that seems to be why China would intervene. It's not to discipline Iran and say, stop doing the war. No. If Iran is being attacked, China, just like most, they follow the UN charter. It's like, nah, you got to defend yourself. But if there's a chance to get the US to stop, they're going to take it, because what was being said promised, especially by Iran, because we know the United States, we don't never know what the Trump administration or any U.S. administration is going to do actually. It's words, right? But the words, the civilization-ending strikes, they, you know, if they had conducted any of that, any of the energy strikes, then yeah, we would have seen Iran hit back in kind, and China trusts Iran to do that. So they just didn't want to see that. Nobody really wanted to see that. It would have been born out of a necessity of this criminal war. And now we have the conclusion of Iran has control of a major part of the global economy, and the U.S. can do nothing about it, which is really the big checkmate at the end. Without further ado, everyone, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Go to the video description. You can find Scott Ritter's website, scottritter.com. You can support him there. You can find Larry Johnson's website, Sonar21. You can follow him and support him there. All the places to support this channel, Patreon, Substack, and much more. You can support my channel through those avenues. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, April 10th, I will be with Pepe Escobar at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, April 10th, to continue the daily coverage. Well, without further ado, everybody, it was a great show. I really, I thought it was a great analysis, great show. We're going to continue doing this as much as we can as the new phase of the war continues and develops. Everyone who's still watching, we had a big crowd, almost 30,000 today. We still have 21,000 on. If you hear me and you're still listening, be sure to hit the like button, because if we get even half of you, if you even half of you haven't hit the like button and you do, you will make sure that this stream gets out there to the rest of the YouTube algorithm that has not been able, or at least as far as possible through the YouTube algorithm. And that's all. It's very much appreciated. See you tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, April 10th. Until then, bye.